A US appeals court has come up with a ruling on drugs marketing that is good news for companies that produce them, but it seems to be a pretty bad prescription, not just for those who use them, but also for the government. Siren, what's the deal? What have they decided to do?
Well, they've decided that a salesman, there's a drug that's approved for narcolepsy. Not many people have narcolepsy, but he was selling it for things like just general fatigue, chronic fatigue, which can be kind of like a made-up syndrome, not even disease.
And of course, these drugs are approved by the FDA.
Probably by the FDA. And what the FDA says, you can use this drug for a certain thing, and then the drugs and pharma reps have to be very careful, and they can say, okay, they can only market it for these set conditions. Doctors can prescribe it for whatever they want, however.
Yep.
And what this means is that the pharma companies got in trouble over the past several years, past decade. This year, Glaxo paid a $3 billion fine for selling drugs that weren't approved for conditions they weren't approved for.
So the whole thing is, you come up with a drug, the FDA approves it for certain uses, and doctors can use it for something else, but the marketing guys can't.
Well, and that's the interesting thing. I mean, it sort of boggles the mind why the doctors can legally prescribe it, but the salesman can't legally recommend it for the off-label purposes. And what the court said was, that's just wrong. That's just nuts, because a salesman has a First Amendment right, a constitutional free speech right, to give the doctor truthful information about the drug. And this FDA rule violates.
That's assuming it's truthful, though, right?
Got to be truthful. It can't. I mean, a salesman can't say, "Oh, this is great for brain tumors," when it's a narcolepsy drug, if it's just not true. That would be illegal, and the court actually said in its opinion, if you're going to misbrand a drug and in essence lie about a drug, that's prohibited. But you can't stop the salesman from giving you honest information.
You're of the opinion that the judgment is okay?
Well, I think
legally
it makes sense. Now, obviously, it's going to have side effects, so to speak, because companies are going to be saying, well, look, I mean, if it's upheld, it's got. Let me just point out that this is just in the Second Circuit, New York, Vermont, Connecticut. Right. It's not a national decision yet, but if it goes to the Supreme Court, it will be.
So, I mean, actually, you're not a fan of this because. Well, you think it can just be abused?
Yeah, for two reasons. First off, a lot of diseases are kind of related, and you can see why a drug will work in one. You think, okay, maybe it'll work in the other because it works in this. For example, depression is linked to various other things like anxiety. Right. And you've had cases where, for instance, Glaxo, one of the reasons they paid this big fine is because they said, okay, adults get depressed, this drug works in depression or anxiety, let's give it to kids. The problem is that it didn't work in kids and it caused a higher rate of suicide.
But why were the doctors allowed to prescribe it? I mean,
doctors allowed to do whatever they want. Because
I suppose they have the training, whereas a salesman is, no offense to salesmen, but you're just salesmen.
Exactly. And the other thing is that there is a break on the doctors a little bit, in that insurance companies can say, well, we're not going to pay for that, and doctors typically won't prescribe something if insurers won't pay for it.
So I mean, you're saying one issue is that these multi-billion-dollar lawsuits, which was no one should want a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit, but it's good for government coffers.
Yeah.
But there's another.
The other thing is that spending will go up. I mean, it's simply the case.
Healthcare spending.
Pharmaceutical spending. Because if you can, you get a drug that's approved, and if a big pharma has lots of sales reps and they have lots of indications, they can say, well, it'll probably work in this, then that'll increase the spending on this. It's simple as that.
Okay, excellent. Well, Rob, Ren, thanks for that. We'll be back tomorrow with more Breaking Views.